Hello, everybody, and welcome to another history of old First Division teams. This video is about the history of Everton FC. Who's so? Let's get started, shall we? Everton used to play their own matches at Anfield, Liverpool, of all places, but they had a disagreement with a landlord, and they moved to their to Goodison Park, where they remained until the start of the 2025-26 season. Let's start with Everton's history, shall we? Everton's glory years started in the start of the 1960s. In 1961, when Harry Trick became manager of Everton. That's when Everton's glory years started. They won the old First Division in 1962-63 season, and then they won the FA Cup in 1966, where they beat Sheffield Wednesday 3-2. Sheffield Wednesday were winning 2-0, and then Everton came back to win 3-2. And by then, Everton were starting to have players that would make Everton great. You had Gordon West in goal. You had Howard Kendall, Ryan LeBone, Colin Harvey, Alan Ball. Now, Alan Ball joined Everton from Blackpool. And of course, you had Joel Royal, a tremendous goal scorer, a centre forward he was at the time. He was a tremendous goal scorer. And like I've said at the beginning of the video, that's when Everton's glory years started in the 1960s. 2 years later, in 1968, they were at Wembley again for the 1968 final, where they played Albion. And of course, Albion beat them 1-0. It was after extra time with Jeff Astle scoring the only goal of the game. And then after that, Everton won the old First Division title in the 69-70 season. Leeds finished second. And as we ended the 60s and entered the 70s, well, Everton were at a quiet period then in the 1970s. They still had the likes of Alan Ball and Joe Royal. They still had players like that. But Everton were another team, really, that should have won more trophies. They should have won the old First Division again. They had the players to do it. They should have won them again, but they didn't. And of course, Harry Patrick, he was still there, but eventually he retired and he left Everton. And then the Everton's squad of players like Ball and Royal, they left Everton. Alan Ball went to Arsenal of all teams, and then Joel Royal he went to Manchester City. Everton, like I've said, Everton had a quiet decade through the 70s. They didn't really finish high enough in the table, challenge for for Europe, and winning the old First Division again. They uh, finished about 18th, 14th, and like that. But they never really won more trophies like they should have done. And of course, by then, the players who played for them in the decade, in the 60s and in the early 70s, they were coming up to retiring and they had to be replaced by different players. And then in 1974, Everton bought Bob Latchford from Birmingham City. And Howard Kendall, he went the other way to, to Birmingham City. They did a swap deal. And Bob Latchford was a tremendous, terrific goal scorer. He helped get Birmingham City promoted from the old second division into the first division. And Everton bought him in 1974, like I've said. And he stayed there a while, and then he left, joined Swansea. It was in the start of the 1980s. But Everton's, like I've said, Everton's golden years were in the 1960s. In the 1970s, well, they didn't have too much success. They didn't have a lot of success then, and they had a lot of success in the 1980s because they were Everton were really a good team. I mean, they had that tremendous League Cup final where they played Villa and they drew, and then they had a replay at Hillsborough where Villa won the League Cup. And who can remember that 30-yard rocket from Charlie Nicholl, the Villa centre half? We all remember that. But Everton were, like I've said, Everton were a good cup team. They won the FA Cup and they played Liverpool. This was the late 80s. Played Liverpool twice and Liverpool beat them. And of course, now Everton are playing at a new stadium, Earl Dickerson Stadium, and it's it's not like the old Goodison Park, but still, you have to move on. That was an old ground, that was Goodison Park. Everton were known as the Toffees, and them, them this season they've had a good season. They usually fought with relegation the last few times, but they avoided it. This season they've had a good season with David Moyes, and they're still trying to see if they can play in Europe this season. When the Premier League first started, Everton were always fighting to avoid relegation. They did one end of the last batch of one season in the Premier League. They almost were relegated. They managed to win and stay up. Everton, like I've said, over the years, we've had some great players. Like I've said, the likes of Alan Ball. He used to play for England, and then he went to Arsenal, and then he managed Southampton. And Joel Royal, he was another old-fashioned centre forward. He went to he left Everton and he went to Manchester City, and then he went to Norwich City, and he ended up managing Oldham Athletic. So yes, Everton have had some glory years and great players of the past, and of course they'll be fondly remembered by the Evertonians, and of course Everton and play Liverpool. That's always looked forward to by Everton fans. When will they be playing Liverpool? They've had some tremendous right tussles in the past between those two. I mean, we all remember Wayne Rooney when he played for Everton. He'd scored a great goal, didn't he? And you had Andy King. He scored a tremendous goal against Liverpool. Yes, going back over the years, Everton have had some great matches. I remember when they played Albion. This was in the late 60s. This was they beat Albion 6-2, and then we played them again a couple of seasons later. We beat them 2-0. So Albion have had some good games against them. There was one match in the early 70s where we drew 3-3 with them. There was plenty of goals in that one. And the following season, I think we lost 2-0 to them. Alan Whittle, he scored both goals. That's when things started to go a little bit wrong for Albion, which I shall look at in another video when I get round to the history of Albion. And like I've said, Everton have had some great players in the past, and now, like I've said, they'll be always fondly remembered. Gordon West, he was Everton's goalkeeper. He was an underrated goalkeeper. He was a good goalkeeper. And you had, like I've said, uh, Howard Kendall and Brian LeBone. He was Everton. He was their centre half. And Colin Harvey, he was a good player as well as Alan Ball and Joe Royal. Well, anyway, that ends this another video of the history of old First Division teams. I'll see you all again in another one.